Let's look at the thoracic cage, but first we look at the sternum. The sternum forms what we call the breastbone. It protects many of your internal organs in the thoracic cavity, like your heart. The sternum has three major regions. The superior region is known as the manubrium. Manubrium actually means handle of a sword. And if you look at the sternum, it does look like a sword. The body is where you will find a lot of the costal cartilage attachments. And that's the cartilage that's going to attach the ribs to the sternum. And then the most inferior region of the sternum is known as the xiphoid process. And xiphoid means sword. So you have kind of the blade of the sword and the handle of the sword. You'll notice there are some notches. The clavicular notch is for your clavicles or collarbones, one here and one over here. On top of the manubrium, there's what's called the suprasternal notch, located above the sternum. You'll notice that the sternal angle is a very important landmark. It is the region where the manubrium fused with the body of the sternum. That sternal angle is palpable. You can feel it. It's a clinical landmark that helps medical professionals identify the second costal cartilage. The second costal cartilage will be attached to the second rib. So if you look here, this is the second rib making contact at roughly the sternal angle. The xiphoid process is also a palpable clinical landmark. It marks where you would find T9 vertebra if you went towards the back. It is very important to avoid when you're doing chest compressions. When given CPR, you do not want to put too much pressure on that xiphoid process because it has been known to fracture off and cause lacerations to internal organs. So that is the sternum or breastbone. We're going to next add it to the thoracic cage. So here is a sternum showing the manubrium, body, and xiphoid process. Here we have all this costal cartilage, which is holding many of the ribs to the sternum. If we look at a prototypical rib, it's going to have two ends. One end is going to be the end that attaches to the vertebrae, and that is known as the head of the rib. On the head, there's often two facets. So this rib will make a couple contacts at that head. Moving a little farther, you go to a knob-like structure known as a tubercle. And on that tubercle, there's a facet. That's the facet that will make contact with the transverse process of the vertebra. Then there's a bit of an angle. It'll angle around anteriorly, and it may or may not have a facet for costal cartilage. There are two ribs that do not make contact with the sternum in any way, so they do not have costal cartilage. Looking at the ribs, we have 12 pairs, 12 on the right, 12 on the left, and you can categorize them a number of different ways. Rib 1 through 7 are known as true ribs. If we look back at the previous picture, we will see that ribs 1 through 7 are going to all have their own cartilage that goes to the sternum. So they have been known as true ribs. 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 are collectively known as false ribs. But 11 and 12 are also known as floating ribs. 8, 9, and 10 are known as false because they don't have their very own cartilage. If you follow their cartilage, 8, 9, and 10, their cartilage attaches to Seven's cartilage. So that is the reasoning behind calling them false. They are not any less of a rib. They function just like any other rib. They were just known as false ribs because of their attachment to Seven's costal cartilage. 11 and 12 are also commonly called floating ribs because they do not attach to any costal cartilage and therefore do not in any way make an attachment to the sternum. So if we go back again, we have ribs 1 through 7 being true ribs, 7 through 12 being false, but then the subcategory of the false ribs being the 2 floating ribs, ribs 11 and 12. Here's a very good view of how a rib and a thoracic vertebra articulate with one another. This is a superior view. We're looking down at one of the 12 thoracic vertebrae. We're looking at one of the 12 pairs of ribs. This would be the head region of the rib making contact at the body. Here is the tubercle, the little knob-like structure, and located very close to it is a facet as well. So this rib makes contact here and here on this vertebra. That is the end of the axial skeleton. Congratulations, we made it. The next video lecture is going to pick up with the appendicular skeleton.